Welcome to the second episode of Pure Derry Talks. Tonight we're going to be hearing from a man who basically needs no introduction, even though we're going to do one anyway, and that is Mr. Pat Ramsey himself. Pat is going to take us on a whirlwind stop of his life and his career and answers all the questions that I'm sure you want to know and probably have wanted to ask him about the lost and found that has since become a bit legendary across the city. The conversation with Pat actually lasted over 2 hours. You'll be delighted to hear that we've edited that down to an hour. We've got all the real kind of highlights of the conversation on there. So I hope you'll stick with us with the format. I am getting to grips with not only the technology, but also the production side of things, and it's become a bit of a passion project for me that I'm very, very much enjoying. So, and lastly, before we get into Pat, I am tonight wearing an ARC fitness t-shirt from Addiction Recovery Coaching. You're probably aware of the great work ARC are doing in the city, and they're currently at the moment doing a campaign called No Shame, which is to destigmatise addiction. The work that they are doing in the city is instrumental. We have supported them on the lab fund in the very, very early days. And genuinely, I think that those who are signed up to this program, who are going on to become advocates for the positivity of recovery, are saving lives in the city. And there are so many great people and great stories coming out of this organisation now that I think they deserve some credit and respect. So I'm showing my solidarity for No Shame, and as you'll hear on tonight's episode, addiction is something that is close to both mine and Pat's heart, and you'll find out why if you listen to the episode. So without further delay, this is Pure Derry Talks, Pat Ramsey. You can't have a Derry podcast without talking to Pat Ramsey. I think it wouldn't work. Pat, how's lockdown treating you anyway?
Lockdown, I suppose everybody has their own issues with lockdown, and up until March last year, I was swimming 5 days a week. And not only was it good for my body, but it was good for the mind as well. And then since lockdown, it's just impossible. I suffer from a range of orthopedic issues, and they take its toll when you're not exercising. My mobility wouldn't be great, and the reasons I left Stormont, with the surgery on my shoulder,
right,
and with a hip replacement, I'm waiting on disc issues. They're going to fuse the discs,
all right,
and
okay.
compounded with all that, and not being out when you're swimming and doing one thing and another, you're building up your muscles on around these difficulties, which helps considerably. And then we lockdown. I was on the urgent list for shoulder surgery 2.5 years ago, for urgent.
And you're still.
So those are the dilemma facing everybody. But as I said to many a person, I thank God it's not cancer. Painful and all it is, it's not going to take me out.
Well, and then these are the real issues that people are facing at the moment. With everything going on, is that there's real surgeries and real issues not being, surgeries aren't going ahead, real issues aren't being caught. I know Dr. Duffy was on The View last week, talking about the very same thing. And as you probably know, Pat, my mum is in a care home. No, she's had both her vaccinations now already. She's had the Pfizer vaccine. So
happy days.
Yeah. So, but we can't get to see her at the moment. What about yourself? Anything on getting any indication when you might get the vaccine?
Well, I'm on the annual flu list, and by all accounts, the scheduling from the Department of Health would suggest that sometime in April, those between the ages of 55 and 65 would get the first. Mm-hmm. So fingers crossed.
Everybody would love to be able to get well, not everybody, because that's a controversial topic, but most people would like to think they could get it as soon as they can.
I agree, and my Anya, who's only 20 at university, but in between times and COVID, she started working as a carer. She got her vaccination last week, which naturally so, because she's working with vulnerable people. But before she went, an interesting story there where they try to cut or curtail, I suppose, violations of those getting vaccinations. That, for example, Anya Ramsey sent on her mother because she was more worried about her mother. Her mother was more anxious of getting it. So they had to introduce a photographic ID for those entering the foil arena to get their injection. And you've seen it happening in councils in England where they could have 60 vaccinations left over at the end of the day. And you know the vaccinations, they have to be used. And the staff in some of the councils were taking it themselves, which caused a bit of an uproar.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. So you have a similar situation here, and that, for example, in the Foyle Arena, there's a schedule. You get a call. You have to be there at 10 o'clock. A lot of people don't want it. A lot of people may not be able to get there. So they have so many at the end of the day. So they could ring Pat Ramsey at 4 o'clock and say, see, if you want your vaccination, you need to be here by 4:30, whatever they have remaining left over at the end of the day. So it's a good method of doing it. So I'm waiting for my phone call, Keir.
You're waiting for a call. I'll be waiting a while, but no, I mean you're right, and not it is not everybody wants it, which is a whole conversational cul-de-sac of its own, But we can't have a conversation in this era without discussing the pandemic. And how have you found the response, like regionally and nationally?
Derry was doing well the first lockdown. I think people relaxed somewhat. And they let things go, and it was obvious by the sheer hike in what happened in Derry. I'm not entirely saying it's all young ones, because my daughter will go through me, because young people are as responsible as the next. But there are people who there feel it's never going to happen to me. It's okay to have a wee drink with friends out in the bar, and wee drinks in houses, and wee drinks here, and wee drinks, particularly over Christmas. Christmas is a hard time for everybody, and the jury's still out whether or not the government was right to ease a wee bit in Christmas. I go out to town, and at times before I would go out to town, I keep a mask on all the time, right throughout. And I look at people on Foyle side or Richmond, I'm saying, like, why are you not wearing that mask? Why are you not wearing a mask? And you'd love to say to them, nurses are forced to wear a mask, PPA for 12 hours a day. They're coming home with bruises all over their face, and you're asked to wear a mask for 10 months to go and get your goods.
I know.
But you hear all these, and there is a lobby in Derry. Oh, thank God, it's only a small amount of people who don't wear your mask, don't social distance. This is all a con. This is a stroke. This is a contrivance. And some contrivance. When you look at America, nearly 400,000 deaths. It's shocking. Beyond belief.
And I mean it's something that we've all witnessed, unfortunately, around the city, and there's been people buying in more increasingly into these pillars of thought that have and I think it's a decision that people make early on, and they just get so far into that mindset that they just have to keep justifying these decisions over and over. Once you make that decision in your head that it's not real, it's a hoax. And they're looking for everything, and I've said that before, and I understand that people get frustrated, but it seems that there's no answers for anything. It's just excuses. There's no solutions being offered, and it seems that the default position is just let's do nothing. let's not do anything. Let's not social distance. Let's not worry about lockdowns. Nobody wants a lockdown, obviously, but let's just pretend this isn't happening and it'll go away. And that seems to be, and that's a very frustrating, thing to deal with as a sane normal person.
There's 2 people in Craigan as we talk who have been waked, who died of COVID, who were very ill in the hospital the last few weeks. There's a friend of mine, he'll not mind me mentioning his name because it was in the paper, Eugene Bell, 50 years of age. Went to the gym every day, non-smoker, kept himself reasonably fit. He was in the height of pendency unit this time last week, where his breathing was so bad, impaired, it was 100% oxygen, and life-threatening condition. And these people saying, it only happens to older people, The doctor says the only thing that kept Eugene Bell going was the mere fact that he was at a level of fitness. One thing and another. So people with these conspiracy theories, I've always said, and I've said in a few posts on social media, I wonder would you go to a COVID ward and spend a day in it?
Exactly.
But there are people who are fundamentally believers that there's a huge conspiracy, and this conspiracy is in the media, it's in politicians, and it's worldwide. And I do feel sorry for them because, until there's a knock on your door or there's an ambulance being called for, that when realism will set on.
It's certainly been frustrating to watch it. play out. I think it's definitely reduced now. That's the one thing I will say. Definitely, it's quieting down. The silent majority is taking it seriously. And I believe that. I think the vast majority of people are taking it seriously. Sort of dissenting voice is the ones that seems to be louder than it actually is.
Yeah, but there'll come a day, I think, that they'll get fewer and fewer because realism will kick in. It's at the end of the day, it's your responsibility. And I say to the people too, and I know somebody who won't take the vaccine, and I says, "But you not taking this vaccine? You could pass it on to families or people who would have underlying health problems that may take them out. So that's what your responsibility is, not to yourself. It's also for others."
But I think apart from that, Pat, too, I mean, you're talking about house parties, you're talking about what people's own responsibility. And I mean, as you probably know, I was very vocal about the issue at the very start of the pandemic. Not so recently. I've just stopped for my own mental health. I was like, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I think I've said what I want to say. For now, it has to be said too that the government response hasn't helped matters at all. When you look at a situation like New Zealand, and what they've done, and I know it's really challenging on the island of Ireland, but could you imagine if Ireland had have locked down, closed the borders, north and south, tracked and traced everything, and got the virus right down to zero? We could be doing what New Zealand are doing, which is opening up their economy again, supporting local food produce, supporting local artists. All those things could be happening. And I think now, in hindsight, looking back, everyone's looking at the situation we're in now versus what other parts of the world are doing and thinking, what are we doing? It's crazy what's happening. It actually,
and I don't think our own executive bullet points and messages was consistent. No. I think they failed the business community in many regards by not having a consistent approach, a hobby horse approach. 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and now we're left in a dilemma where we've heard this week it's going to be now delayed to the 5th of March. It could extend further again, because this. This is a lethal disease and it's a life or death situation. Governments have a responsibility. I would not like to be the decision maker. I think Robin Swan, as a health minister, has come out with a bit of credit. I think he has shown good leadership in terms of what he's done. He's had a hard task in trying to convince parties who were difficult to convince, including some of their MPs who swan over the Westminster, not wearing masks and think it's all a joke. But I think in going forward, I think an ideal approach for a small island like Ireland was having a unified approach, and sadly it was neglected. And I would always go and hope it's not for political reasons. We have great fundamental cross-border, the cancer centre in Altnagalbin, where people from Letterkenny can come to Altnagalbin instead of travelling to Dublin. Those are the examples of a modern Ireland where people are sharing provisions, that at the end of the day, it's less money and expenditure on the economy because people are sharing resources. So why did they not do it through the pandemic?
Totally. And I think it's as you say, it's been complete lack of joined up thinking on it. But at the other side of it too, Pat, we can criticize and I think we've every right to, but no one's really gone through this before either. This is a complete no. And how many times have you heard the word unprecedented throughout this pandemic? You've heard it an unprecedented amount of times. But it is true, and the reason for that is that we live in a blame culture. We do live in a blame culture. So if you take a step back from that and say, okay, there is blame to be apportioned, but also we've never had to endure anything like this. We've never had to live through this, and we should be learning lessons from this. The criticism I think comes when maybe we should have learned lessons after lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, and we're still not implementing them by lockdown 3. So, look, we could talk about it all day, and I'm sure it'll come up in throughout our chat because we're living in lockdown. It's snowing outside, and we're both stuck at home. But it's been an incredibly weird time.
No, it's a horrible time, and I spoke to some people. The only time we go out is we're going for messages, going for goods. And some people of my own age, who would maybe appreciate or understand that. I'm 62 and I would say that, we didn't experience this massive stress during the Troubles, during the conflict. The Troubles was a doddle compared to this.
Yeah.
Because we weren't locked down in our homes. We weren't under curfew.
Yeah.
We could go out, we could mingle with friends. We could go out and have a beer. We could go out and have a game of snooker. We could go out and have a game of football. Yeah. Everything has stopped. people have not even been allowed to grieve properly. You're not
No,
allowed to
I don't.
the traditional Irish wake, where people, and through momentum and through the adrenaline. I have a neighbour of mine who died at the end of March. She still hasn't had a requiem mass because she was one of the first in COVID. She didn't even get on the chapel. And it's the same, people getting wake now. You're restricted on numbers. You're going to a requiem mass belonging to someone. There's 25 people can go on to it.
My cousin passed away last week, Paula Taylor. God bless her. She was
yeah.
She, and I she'd been sick for a while. It was cancer, and she'd been sick for a number of years, and we had to go around to the wake, and it was the same. It's so odd because you only want to go in and pay your respects for a couple of minutes, and you're leaving all the windows and the doors open, and and families standing outside, and in very, very small numbers, obviously. And then when it came to the service itself, it was only immediate family could go, so you can't even go and pay your respects to people that you love and your wider family. So it is a tough time. I think we kind of got lucky when. Got lucky. What a way to phrase it. But we, when in the summertime hit, my dad, it was starting to ease off when my dad passed away. Just starting to ease off. So we did have a limited number at the church, but then when my sister passed on, then we were able to get a wee bit more. But the numbers were very, very low at that point. But people now, recently it's just been difficult. But no, it's a tough time, Pat. And as I say, I don't want to pay it lip service because I think there's people out there struggling with a lot of stuff.
No, I'm one of these persons. Big Pat's a hugger, and the environment you're in, you want to hug somebody who's down. You want to just give them,
give them a big bear hug.
All you can do now is just give them a smile on your face. Where you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours, and that's what's missing as well. That emotional attachment that people would have, that feel a wee bit better than somebody throwing their arms around them, and saying I'm sorry or whatever it is, and all that's missing. Well, we get it back, and that's another story. The hugging's over.
I'll have a hug. So what are you saying, Pat? If we can raffle off hugs with Pat Ramsey when this is all over? There you go, folks. Exclusive. You heard it here. With 20 hugs up for grabs. 20 Pat hugs. Brilliant. Well, look, it's definitely a strange time, and for anybody that's struggling at the minute, and at the moment, and definitely talk to people, keep in contact with your family and your friends, and do video chats. All the things that work for me. Go for walks and try and catch up with people out on the quay or whatever. Although they're getting on to people now for walking the quay recently, I noticed, but I get it. It's too many. There's too many on the quay. But Pat, look, getting on to more, I suppose, more lighthearted and obvious things that we want to talk about. I can see your eyes rolling there already. I mean, you've spent your life in service. You were a councillor, obviously, locally. You were the mayor, and then you sort of went on to become an MLA. But obviously, in the last number of years, you've sort of become the patron saint of lost things in Derry. I mean, is that a role you ever thought that the city needed, or did it just kind of naturally evolve? Tell us a wee bit about that.
Well, first of all, a lot of people wouldn't know that. I was a youth worker in the Bogside, St. Eugene's Youth Club, at the very difficult times of trouble in the 70s. And part of my role or remit that I seen in life was to try and ensure young people didn't get themselves involved in trouble, didn't get themselves involved in paramilitary groups. And at times, through my own dilemma, there was fierce resistance to that, because it was a period where I now understand, after Bloody Sunday in Derry, that there's anger and frustration and hatred towards the British Army, but not prolonging it. But I loved my days in youth work, and in that regard, I was always helping people, young people going up to court. You might have given a witness for them, you might have went up and give a reference for them. So my outlook on life was always about helping people. Then my mother became involved with the SDLP. And John Hume in particular, one of the founding members in Derry, the SDLP. Naturally, it was the next thing for me to do, and I helped out at elections for quite a long time, long even before I was 18, but I was always tall and lanky, a lot skinnier than I am now, may I add as well. So it was the next step. It was the next step up, and I went on to council in 1984. Thoroughly enjoyed council because council is all about people say, "What do you want to do politics for?" I said, "Because I want to help people."
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. I want to improve the quality of lives for people, whether that's in the community or in their lives or in their families' lives. And when I'm on the council as well, I started working out of John Hume's office for about 15 years as well. I did become mayor, and one of the most pleasurable parts of my life, I have to say, the millennium year, when things were good and enjoyable and one thing and another. And one of the moments for the first time in something like 70 years, there was a freedom in the city to a person that year I brought forward myself, and that was the freedom of the city to John Hume. John was the first in 2000 to receive that.
I remember that.
So that gave me great and immense pleasure to acknowledge the contribution of Hume for the first time. When he was at himself, may I add as well.
Yeah.
When he could appreciate it more in his life, when his own quality of life was good. And then in 2003, I decided then my next step, I had a reasonably good profile, and the party felt that it was now time to go in the assembly. And I went into the assembly, and still no, I was one of these guys in the assembly. I was in every working group going, and the old party group on visibility, the old party group on disability, chaired the old party group on learning disability, which I still have a huge interest in young people, children with special needs. And then it came to a stage where, for medical reasons we talked about earlier on, it wasn't for me. I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand. The travelling was taken out of me. My own surgeon, Alton Gavin, said, "Pat, you can't travel anymore. You're going to have to give up." So it was the right time for me. I felt good. If people say, "How are you going to cope?" I cope very well giving it up, I can tell you. although and taking up, what did evolve in was, and it started off as a wee chance when I was in the office. Somebody lost a gold chain somewhere in the city, and the message came through, "Could you put a message up?" And Emma, who worked in my office, said to me, she said, "Pat, put it up as a community notice." And that's how it started. That's how the whole concept of community notice started. But it developed, it took legs of itself in many regards, because people would say, "Oh, there, Mr. Derry's lost and found." And I says, "Well, it was much, much more than that now."
Yeah.
And it got to a stage where clearly, you would have needed a management team to manage the process. And people were saying to me, "Look, we'll do your admin." And I said, "But you can't. That's my family's send me messages as well, and my own close friends, some very private messages, so it was impossible." And even a journalist friend said to me, "If you do retire, Pat, would you give me your page?" That's genuine.
Really?
For the simple reason, there's a lot of times where somebody would contact me with a very newsworthy item that immediately you would get a call maybe from Kieran Turish or somebody else. "Pat, what about that story?" The Derry Journal would ring, the Derry News would ring, Dawn on the Belfast Telegraph would ring. "Pat, can you contact that woman last night?" Blah, 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 blah. So it was a lot more than that there. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Help it. At the same principle, as I said at the onset, I was helping. I said, I can go to my bed with a good heart on myself to say that I did a good turn for somebody.
Yeah. Does it get frustrating in that sense that you've been a social worker, you've been a councillor, you've been an MLA, you've been the mayor of the city, and does you ever sort of think, well, now I'm kind of people know me as the lost and found. There's a lot of kids in America that don't recognize Michael Jordan except for knowing him as the guy in the memes that cries. There's that idea that there's a certain amount there. The younger people know you're Pat Ramsey, lost and found. They maybe don't remember when you were the mayor, and they don't remember when you were an MLA.
No, I agree. Yeah, I'll tell you, when things were normal and we would go out to town for say before she went to university, we would go out to town. "Pat, you're not going to be stopped by somebody else. You're not going to be stopped by somebody else." And there was a lot of people who, as you say, weren't even of my age, but just enjoyed that wee thing last night. That story, was it true? But I remember one story. Funny. This message came in late. If I didn't get the morning, it came in 2 in the morning. I was in Jack's Bar last night and I lost a set of dentures. And they were porcelain dentures and they were very expensive. And I thought it was a wind up and blah, blah, blah. But it did evolve that this lady did take them out or whatever she was doing. And I jokingly said to her, I says, I think I found him, the guy's neck in Ballymacurdy, but see, there's an interesting twist to that. Me and Chris were involved with a wee Christian group, a youth group, and we were meeting in Strabane, core group. And about 20 of them there, and this young fella came up to me at 17. Pat, he says, them was my mammy's teeth. so those are the funnier moments that you get. And they were 480 quid.
Well, they were £480, cost a fortune. Is that the most random thing? I mean, because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you is like, what is the most random thing that you've been asked to find? There's been some crackers, obviously.
This guy came on me, he says, I was out with some friends last night in the Metro bar, and I met this guy at the bar. He was called John. And for whatever happened, all of a sudden he wasn't there. And I said, fair enough. I said, what do you want me to do? Could you put up a wee message, just script it yourself, and put up a wee message on the Metro at about 11 o'clock. So I put this up. Thinking there's a bit of fun on this, and there was a great bit of ad love from people coming on and doing this and doing that. But 2 weeks after, the guy came in and said, Pat, no, he contacted me and I had to pass on the information. So 2 weeks after, he said, we were out again, and we did. And we were going strong now. And you think that was the end of the story. But about 10 months after that, this message came through and she said, Pat, you're going to be invited to our wedding. because I was engaged yesterday. Now, the wedding hasn't taken place. And that's gospel.
Really?
I'm telling you, I should have wrote all these down and a Derry bookings on them or something,
Pat Ramsey's Lost and Found memoir would be a definite, Guildhall Press should be all of that. If you are listening.
The other positive one, and it must be 3 years ago, around December, the beginning of December, this young fella came on to me, and I knew him, he was about 18 or 19. He says, I was passing the Abbey Street this morning, going to my work, and I found a bag with money on it. And I said, how much money was on? He says, £3,000. And I said, God, that's such and such. And no, this is another true story. I said, that's wonderful that you would feel it in your heart that you want to give it back to that person. It was an older woman who had done the credit union who had taken her mum, taken some money out of the bank because she was frightened of the banks at that moment in time. She withdrew the money from the bank, going towards the credit union to put the money on. So, people talk about, and I get so fed up, people having to go at young people and criticising young people, but by God, our young people can be good. Too many of our young people be tarnished for a small group of people. And I'd always say young people aren't bad born. We create the environment that causes them to have difficulties, or they're brought up in a family environment that causes them that they're not getting proper parental. But our young people amazes me at times with some of the stuff they come out to, but and long may it continue.
We've got this kind of culture where it's easy to blame because, they call, scumbags and all when things happen and all the rest of it. But when you actually scratch beneath the surface, we've got huge socioeconomic problems. People are living in poverty. There's substance abuse. There's alcoholism. It's a really, really deep discussion, and I think obviously it's almost too easy, Pat, to just to tarnish people with that sort of thing to say when there's social problems like that, because there's always a reason for it. Pat, it hasn't always been easy on you. There's always people putting up things trying to catch you out. I mean, have you ever at any point just thought feck this for a game of soldiers? I'm out. This is doing my head in.
I remember one person sent me a message. Wee Johnny Doherty's missing, Pat, from last night, and his mother's distraught, and the photograph of him, and they're worried about him, and I put up the post, for the mother to contact me. He said, take that down. Our Johnny's sitting here in the living room with me, which was a wind-up, and that frustrates me. I can understand people tend to have a kick. But other times, which is more frustrating, for example, and this was probably the main reason why I gave it up, wasn't anything to be lost and found. Lost and found was easy to manage. But there was increasing numbers of people in the city because of some of the points you made. Deprivation, poverty, living on benefits, and a young single mother getting a new house and she needs furniture. And then you have people gifting furniture. People would say, an old suite, Pat, have you something that could take it? I have a kitchen table and chairs, a bedroom for it. And you would put it up and some people come back to you and say, look, my niece has just got a place. But then there was twice I gave furniture to somebody, and then somebody sent me a message. They were up on the Derry buy and sell pages, where somebody got it deliberately, contriving a need that wasn't there. And that's the sort of thing that really gets to me then, because then it's taken away from somebody that does need.
Yeah.
And I was getting too much to manage, because say if Kieran Murray contacted me and saying, Pat, look, somebody belonging to me has died, there's a fridge, there's a freezer, there's a cooker, and you put it up, and 7 or 8 families were saying, well, I need it, and I need it, and she needs it. And I'm saying, who do you give it to?
Yeah.
Who do I believe? Who do I believe is the worst in need? That was a huge dilemma for me, because that would bother me then if I went to bed and that week here said she needed that plan, but I couldn't give it her because somebody else was on before.
Yeah.
She's only out of care, she's a young child. Those are the ones that triggered my conscience. And the amount of work that's required in dealing with those is quite time consuming. So while the other stuff is more visual, the lost and found stuff, the problematic stuff was those areas that I found difficult to deal with. There was other ones, for example, which was the more positive aspect of my Facebook was, remember some girl coming on saying, my mother took bad last night in the Strand Road. 2 boys came along with their sister. Not only did they assist her, but they went over along in a taxi to Elton Galvin Hospital. Could you put up a wee message on your Facebook to try and find out who they are? Because we would like to personally thank them. That was all great stuff.
Yeah,
we were acknowledging the contribution of someone else, and that was becoming quite frequent then.
Yeah.
And other times, for example, it could be a wee business person wanting to start up their business. It could be car washing. It could be making pastry. Go and give us a wee turn, give us a wee mention on your Facebook. Well, the number of people thought there was an advantage to it, and there probably is.
Yeah.
It was free marketing. And those are the aspects, believe it or not, that I would miss, because I realised that it was helping someone.
I know how challenging it is. I mean, I run a fairly big page, obviously, and but I would get a lot of requests for, like, can you put up this and can you promote that, and even for good causes, but also for local businesses as well. And it is nice when you feel like you can do something, but unfortunately, you can't do. You set the precedent. Then for me, I decided early on I'm probably not going to get involved in these sorts of things, because you'd end up just promoting things left, right, and centre. So I look at what you're doing, and I think, fair play. It must be a big undertaking to do that. Obviously now Mickey Doherty's been doing a lot recently as well. Mickey's brilliant. He's been kind of stepping into that role, but I do understand that it must be.
Unfortunately, Mickey had to step back as well.
He stepped back now as well.
He just couldn't manage it. He just couldn't come to terms with it, and for the same reason, me and Mickey are long-time friends. So he phoned me actually. He said, Pat, look what I do. I said, Mickey, just deactivate,
I don't say this disparagingly. This is a psychological, observation that's true right across the world, not just in Derry. But it's much, much harder to get people to engage with positivity than it is to engage with negativity. And I know this because, I've been trying to change my own mindset. I've been trying to create things that are a bit more positive. One of them at the bottom of the screens you can see is the Lab Fund. And, it's an observation that I make that, we could put up a post saying we've got 10 grand to give away. We're going to give away, for businesses that have done really well. We're going to support the arts. We're going to do whatever. And again, this isn't a complaint. This is a genuine observation, is that when you look then and you see, something happens, and, Cop Vosa Watch Derry puts up a post and it's about, something happening in Galia, and the cops are there and there's a whole fight broken out or whatever, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in there engaging and commenting and sharing. And at some point you just think, God, like, that's it. Look at the amount of energy that's gone into sharing and resharing something, that if we could bottle some of that and redivert it into something positive, you could change the world. And then that's the problem with social media, unfortunately, at times. So I think you've done the right thing to step back. You've done it for a long, long time, and I think you've done a really fantastic job.
But you can, I understand, a good and a positive story will never get that attention it truly deserves.
No.
You talked about £10,000 towards your lab fund. If somebody was to steal that £10,000, we get the front page of the journal.
Aye. Exactly.
I'm not deliberately naming the journal, but I'm just saying, because it's one of these stories. But somebody giving away or granting £10,000 to people would look at to get paid 7 at the bottom. It's not. And that's we have to change the mindsets
Well,
of leaders within our community, and that includes the journalists as well.
I think so. We raised £16,000 for PPE last year on the Pure Derry by selling my book, which you did. None of the local media picked that up, and that's a criticism I would have. That's not me going, oh, boo-hoo, per me, because I want the attention. I wanted the exposure for the fundraising, and I didn't get it.
People would say to me at times, oh, you Ramsey on an ego trip keeping this going. I'm saying I'm not, funny enough. And it's not about me. It was never about me. And it's the same with you, Kate. It is not about you.
No, it never is.
And I think it is the case, when you look at others and the contribution they make across our city at the minute, and they wouldn't get 2 lines in these difficult times. The amount of people who are standing out and stepping up the mark, and not a doubt of a word anywhere from them.
Not exactly. And that's the reason that I've started this podcast, is to give people like that a platform. I think it's just an easy excuse for people to be like, oh, you like to put your face on social media, you like to make videos, you like to put posts up, you love the attention. You're like, well, actually, no, I've got something to say. I've actually got potential ideas, I've got solutions, I've got maybe a contribution that I can make that I think potentially can help. That's the mentality you have to break. It's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to look at leadership, and it's okay to believe in yourself and say, I'm going to step forward and start something. And I think that's what needs broken down in the mindset in Derry, I think.
I spent a couple of years on the Culture and Arts and Leisure Committee in Stormont, and I always remember a phraseology that was continuously used when we in the creative industries, and we went to Galway, we went to other places, and the next generation, 50% of the next generation of jobs have not been created yet. And that's where your lab fund, in essence, is to try and stimulate someone's mind, to try and encourage them, to try and motivate them, and to making a difference. And a few £100 Sunday can make a huge difference in their life when they're living on benefits. Yeah. And that's why we need to get others of the mindset. We're in a crisis in Derry at the moment. We're no different from any other town. And the crisis is, how do we survive? Yeah. And it's not how do we survive in terms of the health. We'll park the health fund to that side. How does our businesses survive when we come to the end of this crisis? How do they survive coming up to Easter? There are people there who have very creative minds, and we have to muster and we have to boost them to be more creative, because the more creative they become, they're going to create more jobs. So we have to get that message out to our younger generation who have quicker mindsets to try and to develop ideas, but they need the encouragement, they need the wee push from the older members of our community as well. So it's something I think is ideally needed at the present time, because you talked about mental health. Imagine if you're sitting in a business employing 10 people, and all of a sudden you haven't opened 2 weeks in the past 6 months. Yeah. And you get to a stage, will it close the door or not close the door? When you're 50, is it worth it anymore? We have to develop thoughts. We have to progress plans. We have to make sure those who are in a position to implement those changes. And I'm challenging our own politicians that they have to come up to the mark as well. As our council. Yeah. Our council has to come up to the mark and to be creative and ensure that money is not going to usual suspects. It's going to new people to help them develop and synchronize with others' good ideas,
Getting a wee bit more lighthearted again now. Obviously, memes are pretty widespread. As we record this, obviously the Bernie Sanders one with his gloves, his mittens, has just started doing the rounds on for the last few days. But you've obviously been involved in a lot of memes yourself, a lot of local humor. I have to be honest, put my hand up and say I've probably created about 70% of them. But is that something you've enjoyed?
Some of the times might be over the top. I remember somebody doing a video and I was running a machine gun shooting people, and I says, I'm not sharing it, you know what I mean? Because that was too obscene for me. But there's other occasions. I remember the Hitler video when they'd me telling such and such to do this. And then you have some of the local ones who have great creativity too. Pat coming out in the Batman. It's not Batman, it's Patman, and the big. And some are quite funny, and some would say to me, Pat, do you mind doing? I said, look, it's a bit of fun. People get a laugh out of it. It's none of me. My shoulders are big enough to take it, believe me. Well,
if you don't mind, what I would love to do is I'd love to look at a couple actually with you.
Was that your own again?
That's not mine. I'll shout out the ones that's mine. So this is Pat Ramsey, lost and found. We should have had a Pat Ramsey hashtag when we're making these, but I found a lot that I've done. So we'll look through these. There he is, Pat Man.
That's a Pat Man. That's a Pat Man. And over the foil as well. I thought that was particularly good, and the shadow in the sky,
Brilliant. This is obviously the one that I've done. This is when we did the fundraiser last year. And that was just a photo I found of you on the internet, and then I just photoshopped in, and that's my hand. I actually photoshopped out the bottom of my hand. It's holding the book, so your hand is my hand in that photo. It's a behind the scenes sort of tricks of trade. Do you remember this one? This was the Dolly Parton challenge. This is your LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and then Memories of Craigan. Picture of you.
But Craigan Reservoir, the fences, that's away in about 1986 or something there, that photo. The Craigan Reservoirs, I remember it very well.
Brilliant. That's. This was a wee meme that I did.
Yes.
Which was it was on Christmas, so it was Happy Birthday, Jesus. Hope you have a nice day.
I think that was the first time we had really a conversation.
It was
on the Happy Birthdays.
It was actually. I think did you wish me a happy birthday, and then I messaged you. Yeah, you wished me several happy birthdays, obviously, but there's a couple of wee Easter eggs in this one, so you can see Mary, Joseph, and the wee donkey, and then we've John Hume. God rest him, is one of the likes. Moses, Elvis, and then Jesus says, "Thanks, Pat. Might see you in a sweat row later for a few scoops. Chatty later, mucker."
That one got a lot of traction on social media.
It did. This was one I did. Do you remember when I put you on the Avengers? It was a story that I did where I had Pat Ramsey joins the MCU. Don't you remember this one? I forgot all about this until tonight. Basically, Pat Ramsey becomes a character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kind of explains itself. You got a shield and everything. Go and stop losing stuff. My head's fried. Pat Ramsey in a heartfelt appeal to Derry.
And people would come on and they would genuinely say, "For Christ's sake, will you give him peaks and stop doing it?" No, they don't see the humorous side. All they do is see in this message, Pat Ramsey getting tortured again.
Well, funny enough, Pat, we nearly made this into a video the Christmas before last, and we had a few scheduling issues. And we were going to do the first Pure Derry video in a couple of years, which was going to be your call center opening up in Pat Ramsey call center. And I'm really, really gutted it never happened.
It was more of a short drama rather than a video because there's quite a bit of. I still have it.
You still got the script. I'm gutted that never happened, but we get our opportunities to do stuff.
You never know. You never know.
Never know. What have I got? This was just one I found. I have photoshopped you into stuff more times than probably my own family. This is I don't remember where you were, but I made you into Santa Claus at one point. I don't know what even that was in reference to. So there you go. Merry Christmas for 2021. Don't know what I was doing here. Why was Pat Ramsey a Scouser? I can't even remember what I was doing here.
But I can't remember that one either.
He must have mentioned Liverpool, and I was a United fan. This was a T-shirt that I found. Derry one's on tour. If found, please return to Pat Ramsey. So people are obviously getting these printed on the Stag and Hen T-shirts.
I can't remember where they went to. It was some part of Spain. There was 12 of them went to it, and a similar one happened to a hairdresser. They had to go and get a photograph taken with her too. They were going somewhere, and they wanted me stand with their T-shirts on them, and they were all delighted, all proud as punch on Stand Airport with all these T-shirts on them.
Brilliant. The last one that I have, which is very relevant to our most recent project that we did together, is Chris Ferry. We watched your the Love Actually video on the first episode, and we were talking about all the crack we had in your house, just when things were a wee bit easier before all the restrictions. What a crack. It was a really good day out.
And funny, even now, if I'm out, people will still at the cash till at that Tesco. Love that video, Pat. Love that video. That was great. That was brilliant. But I think it came out at the right time. It was fun. It was local. People could relate to it. Even Chris saying a few comments. Tell them about that one. They all thought that was very amusing, because it wouldn't even be the way the sharpness of Chris calling out. And when I last look, I find that 1.1 million views on it alone.
Amazing.
It's absolutely remarkable, you know.
Pat, if we can sort of, I suppose, go back to, I suppose, something a wee bit more serious and heartfelt. You know, last year we said goodbye to the man on the wall behind me, the legendary John Hume. Tell us a wee bit about sort of your relationship with him and how he influenced your career and your life.
Well, clearly the conflict, particularly in the 70s, but especially after Bloody Sunday, it tore the heartstrings of a lot of people in the city, particularly young people, teenagers. Some felt the need to get revenge. Some felt the need to have their impact against the British state and the British Army for what happened on the streets of Derry. Funny, the anniversary this week, yesterday. And it was also a case of, you know, I had family members who became involved. The brother became involved in the pro at that time. And others very close to it, but I myself felt the need to go down the peaceful route. And John Hume, who always quoted from Martin Luther, always quoted very thought-provoking speeches and quotes of John, always knife for an eye leaves everybody blind. You know, we can go on and on. And I went down the road of supporting John, and I was heartbroken when I heard of John and knew he wasn't well, and it was clear and obvious that his health has been deteriorating for a long time.
Yeah. At
a time, you know, when he gave so much for the island of Ireland, people thinking John just as a peacemaker, just as someone that was at one stage enabled to bring Gerry Adams under a room to have the discussions and bring them around the table. In many regards, forced them onto the table.
Yeah.
We now have peace. But people forget the role John had. And I think on the 80s when John Hume went on an economic drive to America, and where even the Taoiseach down south didn't have the context that Hume had, with the Terry Kennedys of this world, with Tip O'Neill, the speaker, the third most important person in America, their doors was always open for him. And he went on economic drives. He went to Tucson, he went to Arizona, he went to Washington, he went to New York, and we see the fruits of his labour in the city, where he felt encouraging and stimulating American companies. There's a place in Europe for you. Come to Derry, come to my hometown, come to Northern Ireland. You look at the Foyle Bridge, you look at Richmond, you look at Foyleside. That's all John Hume's endeavours. And but what I mind John from and working out of his office was the greatest principle that he had was the pride that he had in constituency work. There was nothing as important as the wee woman coming in the door looking to get a bigger house for her wains or somebody in benefits. John took greater pride in that and providing that service, and it was immaterial who that person was. Because I seen me and John Tierney sitting many day and somebody come on, we need to go down to the police station, mate, and blah, blah, blah. And we eventually found out Sinn Féin was sending them down to us, because at that time they were still at war.
Yeah.
But they couldn't go. So those are all the elements of it. And funny, in advance, as I was thinking one time in the office, and this is the period where John was in intense discussions on the peace process with Adams. And they talk about where is this paper, John? The Dublin papers were giving them a seriously hard time. Hume, where's the paper? Where's this discussion paper you're having? And I remember seeing Pat Hume in the office, distraught by it all, because she was taking the pressure from John. She was taking the calls from irate people. You know, when you remember the Grey Steel, it would happen simultaneously.
Yes, Grey Steel and Shank. Yeah.
And John at that time was so emotional. But one of the people who lost a loved one, I think it was their father, came up to John that time and says, John, you keep on with this. You've got to keep going. And that was, I think he needed that time, because I think his mind was this way and another way. In the middle of all these atrocities had taken place.
Yeah.
Innocent people were losing their lives. But John and his wife Pat, incredible people. Yeah. Pat Hume had the same intellect as John. John had a tremendous memory. If he knew somebody, he would always remember your name. And that way, it was so hard for him then when he started to lose his memory. He was agitated. And I was saying, who you? But he knew him. He just was upset that he couldn't remember who that person was.
Well, my father had dementia as well, and they're similar age. They died about 6 weeks apart. My dad and John Hume.
Yeah.
both of dementia. And my dad was also a really intelligent man, and we understood that too. That a lot of his frustration came from he knew that his mental capacity was diminishing, and it becomes really frustrating. But on the topic that I asked you about John Hume, I mean, I try and will try and keep this podcast apolitical, but I think at times people and their influence just transcends politics, and I think John did that. I think John I often think now about what we're going through at the moment in the city and the challenges that we're having in the city, and I wonder what John would what he would have to say, how he would approach, as we talked about earlier, how he would reach out to people who are, starting to think, having these conservative right-wing mindset and starting to, let that ignorance kind of, come into their mindset. And I just always wonder, what a loss it's been for Derry, for John. Obviously, his mental capacity had diminished in later years, but just holistically, as a politician who, he was a giant. He was an absolute giant, so it's, and I think at the time that he passed away, obviously it was not a good situation. The week that he passed, there was dissident elements in the city, that were utilizing that as a platform and all the rest of it. I don't want to go into that too much, but I just thought it was pretty horrible and disrespectful at the time, for a man of his stature.
See, it's very easy to go out and hijack a car. It's very easy to go put a gun on some workman coming on the Craig and delivering goods to vulnerable families, to put a gun in their face and burn their van. And it was appalling. It was disgraceful. It was uncalled for. And the demean, because what they were doing was taking advantage of the media presence that was on the city over the death of John Hume. And you're right to say, John Hume wasn't a great day, man. He'll go down.
As a great Irishman.
Not only Irish, but he'll be known as an international peacemaker.
Yeah.
Absolutely known. And a household name in America. I remember, on the funnier side of things, I know we're serious, but we went to Boston, and there's about 14 or 15 of us went over along with John, because I, as mayor, went over there. But we were in the airport in Dublin, anyway, and there were two of the girls along with us, one of Chris Donnelly's assistants from the outside. I'm terribly anxious getting on this plane. I'm terribly upset. And John was saying, you'll be grand. And I gave him two wee white things in their hand. I said, look, one take them there, and the other side, you'll be feeling great. And we arrived in Boston, and the guy said, no, you keep us some of them for the way back. That was fantastic. It was two sweeteners. That's a psychology. That's a psychology.
Where's Pat going this? Where's Pat going this?
But it's I'm always thinking that there, and I'm thinking John, and he wasn't at himself, and he was scribbling away his notes on what he would say. And there was nuns in the front, and there was a big audience. Now, this is around the St. Patrick's Day period, so you had all the Irish all around, coming from everywhere because it was Hume. And he went up. You have to remember, I think his thesis on history was done on immigration as well. So he gave a story on immigration, because that was the theme, the unveiling of the statue. And then he sung Danny Boy, and he had the people in tears.
Oh, brilliant.
Absolutely remarkable. And that's the charisma, that's the talent that John could have had. He could go in the room and lift everybody.
He was so instrumental at that stage of what he achieved, and as you say, he was on that level with the likes of Martin Luther King, where he's a global peacemaker. No, Mandela, Martin Luther King, John, just and to have someone like that from our city, and obviously other great figures as well too. Martin, and there's a lot of great Derry men. Though Seamus Heaney passed away as well too. We've had Derry still.
And remarkable that you have a president of the United States quoting from Heaney from the podium. Absolutely incredible. Fantastic. The impact that we're having in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And from our wee corner of the world. Pat, your career has taken you on many adventures. We've gone right from social work to your politics, the mayor, the lost and found, and all the adventures with Mr. Hume. If you highlight one standout highlight moment that you're proudest of, or what are you proudest of with your legacy?
In terms of legacy, something that you probably wouldn't know, but and a lot of people, most people wouldn't know. During my year of mayor, I was given a huge donation to put towards a project. And it came about because it was, I suppose, a charitable community group that was being passed on to North and West Housing Apex they managed. And they had quite a bit of money. And at that time, I knew what I was going to do. I had a brother who was an alcoholic, it subsequently has passed on, or Noel. And by being on the Guildhall so often, you could see in the streets the difficulties with on-street drinking across the city. And I'm one of the founding members of the Foulhaven.
Right. Didn't know
that. Non-paid director. It was in excess of £20,000, which is a lot of money then, in 2001. And it was a Paul Sheehy, a sergeant in the police. Because what was happening with on-street drinking, the bars would ring, the banks would ring, such and such are two outside the bank and they're sitting with cans, they're outside the Guildhall, moved tourists here, they're outside the Convention Bureau, they're on the street, they're congregating. So I had an idea, how can we provide somewhere where they can go, a safe environment, but a respite for their families as well. But they would get a change of clothing, they would access the medical attention they so needed. And that was set up then with 2 staff.
Wow.
And Sister Catherine Boyle, who's still living, was always somebody that helped as well. So, and it was a minefield, it really was, a huge dilemma in setting up, because in planning times, who wants next door to themselves a drop-in centre for alcoholics?
No, I don't understand.
Nobody would want it.
Nobody.
So it developed so well that a few years ago we were left with no choice, because it was something that was developing so we just couldn't manage.
Right.
Because there now was 12 staff.
Okay.
And there was now 30 or 40 regular street drinkers coming in. And obviously, as it developed, it was also for those who were in the street with drugs as well. And the Paul Island are now managing because we passed it on to them. Some because there was a need for, day-to-day management of it, where we didn't have the time, we didn't have the energy. So if somebody says to me, well, what's your legacy? I take great pride in saying I set up a drop-in centre for alcoholics in Derry.
Well, I mean, I've been probably dropped enough, depressing bombshells over the course of this podcast about my parents and my sister and all the rest of it. But I've also got a brother who is a drinker, and who started drinking on the street. And it's an issue close to my heart. So thank you. And those are the services that we of a family have been thankful for. And we understand how valuable those services are, especially when you get to a point, and as most families do, where you can't do anything else to help them because they won't help themselves. And it's that, where you're just trying to make sure they're, alive. And so, yeah, I mean, again, don't want to get in another depressing segue, but I think it's. I
don't think it's depressing. I think it's something positive coming out of it, because there's other cities that come to us. They say, "Well, how did you create this?" I said, "Because we just had an idea, and it came out of an idea." If you have a son or brother or daughter or sister on the street, you're damn well glad that somebody's looking after them.
Yeah,
keeping an eye on them.
Absolutely.
If there's something medically wrong with them, remember they're trying to get off of drinking and having seizures, you can relate and refer them to the next person who's going to help along that line,
Yeah.
So that's why that's important. It's a good project.
No, absolutely, and well done. It's an unexpected answer. I was expecting you were going to say something about your MLA career, about your time as well. Obviously, it was related to your time as mayor, but that's an unexpected but lovely answer. And so yeah, I that's sort of taken me by surprise.
Surprise.
In a nice way. Thank you, Pat. I think finally, then we're coming to the end. We've been talking now for a long time in this Sunday evening and during lockdown. What are your hopes for the future?
I would love to get out of COVID. I would love to get back on the swimming pool. I really would love to get back on I'd love to get back to a bit of normality. I'd love to be able to go on a summer holiday with the heat. I'll have less aches or pains.
Out to Turkey.
Out to Turkey. For a month or two. but that's your quality of life. I'm on retirement. You want to take advantage of it. We're only here for a short time, and we want to make sure we make use of it as best we can.
Absolutely.
And if ever anybody said to me, "Well, what would you like on your grave?" At least you tried, Pat, and help where you could. And that's my motto in life: help if you can. And never turn somebody away.
Funny you say that. That's one of the tasks I've been tasked with for this weekend, is coming up with something to put on my father's grave. Just as you says that, I'm all, I still haven't done that yet. It's one of them things I've been kicking the can down the road. But I always live by the motto, when life's good to you, send the elevator back down. And that's
absolutely.
And I think not enough people live by those kind of practices where when something's been good, you can try and help other people. You have shown, I think, over the course of your career and your life that you're definitely willing to help people and step up to the plate without a doubt. Pat, it's been absolutely brilliant catching up with you. You are a local legend, and you couldn't have a podcast in Derry without speaking to Pat Ramsey. So I'm delighted you agreed to do this. Would you come back and speak to us again another time?
Of course we will, Cian. Maybe at different times when we're normal environment.
In the future, when things go back to normal, the plan always was to do a podcast in a physical space with sofas and cups of tea and a camera crew and do it properly. So maybe when we get back to a wee bit of normality, you come on and have a cup of tea and sit down, and we'll talk about how we get through the pandemic.
Okay, listen, Ken, thank you as well. Pat, keep up the good work.
I will do. I'll try my best, Pat. You're a gentleman. Thanks a minute, legend. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.